So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what really drives them forward. And today I'm delighted to have this. We've got Thomas Dwyer, who's the Managing Director of Solinear. And Thomas, if you'd like to introduce yourself and Solinear to people watching and tell us how you help people.
Yeah, good morning. We run Solinear Limited. We are a family business. We were founded in November 2004. I was still teeny bopper at that stage, but so it was my dad in the first instance who got this business off the ground, and me and my brother were involved from a very young age, probably too young, about 13, in the factory, getting our hands dirty and learning the business inside and out. So over the years, progressed from the hands-on, the manufacture side of things through to on-site installation. I left school when I was 17 to work for the company full-time. Progressed from the on-site side of things into the office, designing, project managing, and all the way up to running the business and taking it forwards now. We've evolved over the years from, I suppose, a Louvre and solar shading contractor, that being the remit of what we do. I'd say now it's still very much louvers and solar shading, but also bespoke architectural fabrications, because the definition of solar shading and louvers seems to get looser and looser. As each year goes by, architects are taking, perhaps elements and features of what we can do to make less interesting buildings look a little bit more alive. Modern methods of construction can perhaps be a little bland. We're not now using beautiful stone and relying on those things. It's more what comes out prefabricated out of a factory, and then you're left scratching your head and wondering, how do I make this look better and more distinguished from the building next door? So that is what we do at Solinear. Is we support the architectural community, the construction industry in achieving their goals, which a lot of the times they're the parts which are more bespoke, and they do need a bit more guidance as to this is what I want to achieve. Can I achieve that? And if so, how? So that is Solinear Limited. And off the back of that, we've actually developed, as the business has grown, we've been, moving towards sort of, everything being on paper. Old-fashioned filing systems to track, the sales, inquiries, quotations. We developed a software company called Purple Potato Software. So in the first instance, it is a CRM, a cloud-based CRM software. But we've since developed a purchase order element, a project management element. That was launched to the market in June 2021, last year, 2021. And so that is grassroots, early stage. We do have some paying subscribers. It was developed to support Solinear, and we just sort of got a bit carried away and ended up with a commercially viable product. And we thought, well, let's give this a go and see where we can take it. But that software is obviously still supporting Solinear and taking us forward as well. Especially as we're moving more and more towards remote working and the traditional sales process is perhaps moving to the background, and we're now, taking, the focus has shifted more towards, well-structured marketing scheme and using social media to your advantage to get the exposure of the business out there, and then perhaps working smarter and not harder in the sense of actually managing those inquiries, pricing them, and converting them through to sales. That is in a nutshell Solinear, and the accidental purple potato which sort of came off the sides of it. It keeps us busy. We're enjoying it. It's challenging environment, challenging circumstances, but you just got to keep ploughing ahead.
Fantastic. It's a great story as well. So, I mean, was this, growing up as a kid, as you said, you were there at 13, did you ever have any other thoughts of anything else you might do? Or was it always going to be this business?
No, and it wasn't. I missed out the part where I actually left the company when I was 21, moved to the United States in chasing a dream, if you like. I worked and lived over in the United States for going on 8 years. I bartended. I was a bartender. Don't know how that happened, but in and around working for Solinear when I was younger, I always had jobs serving tables in pubs on weekends and things like that. I've always enjoyed hospitality. Tremendous respect for that industry. I mean, that is hard. That is hard work. But yeah, I suppose I got to 21 and I thought, you know what, if I'm not careful, I'm going to spend the rest of my life on Sheriff Hutton Industrial Estate, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that is sometimes the I won't call it a pitfall to being in a family business, but you almost feel to some extent like your future's already decided for you, and you know, you're actually investing in yourself perhaps a little bit more by saying, you know what, no, I'm going to go off the beaten track a little bit. I'm going to go and explore and work for something which hasn't been perhaps spoon-fed as much as a family business can sometimes be. So I think there is that feeling is you know, even through school, people are looking at you and thinking, oh, well, you're all right. You know, you've got a family business. That's a job you can walk into and things like that. And I was always quite keen to sort of make my own name and prove to everybody that, you know what, no, I can just toss that behind me, go off and still be successful. And I had great fun bartending for the time that I did. It's a very different career in the United States than it is in the UK. I suppose in the sense of we had huge clientele from conferences, conventions, exhibitions, such a vast array of different clientele, tremendous networking opportunity. You know, it really was. I was fortunate to work in quite a high-end hotel in the main lobby bar, and everybody passed through there. And the stories over the years, and after doing that for about 7 years, it sort of built up and built up and built up. And I went from thinking I'm having great fun on this side of the bar to thinking, you know what, it's time to go and sit on that side of the bar. And yeah, so 2019 came back, and that was the point at which, you know, my dad was looking to retire at that point. I said, okay, that's fine. I had one child at that stage, and it was time to sort of perhaps settle down a little bit. And so here we are. I can't believe it's been over 3 years since that point. And
fantastic. Fantastic. It's great to, as you say, great to get that variety. And what's perhaps, and we might touch on it later, but what have you brought back from that career into how you operate Solinear?
Strength of communication, I would say, is a key thing. Being standing behind a bar, you're always sort of not front and center in the sense of focus attention, but Americans are quite strong personalities, and I think, you know, especially in, you know, an upscale environment, not only is that a strong personality, but a strong personality that knows what they want and what they like, and if you can't service that, you just get eaten alive. And so I think it was just understanding, you know, conversations, how they flow, knowing when to listen, knowing when to talk, absorbing everything you can absorb. And I suppose, then you come back into business, it does give you a level of confidence that, you know what, actually, I can operate in my comfort zone, Sheriff Hutton, York, but I can also actually operate and function just as well in a totally alien environment. Really? And it does give you a confidence that perhaps, you know, go into business. You need broad shoulders you know, in any industry, but in construction especially. That's something my dad always said to me, and I suppose I didn't really fully understand that as much as I do now. And you have to be able to get knocked down, brush yourself up, and think, okay, there's good days and bad days. You know, take it all and run with it. And you know, I've been listening to. I struggle to read as much now because there's so many distractions. So I've turned to audiobooks, and a couple of the ones I've listened to more recently, you know, they're saying the same. You've just got to keep going, keep driving, you know, not be scared of anything. Ultimately, there's nothing to be scared of. You've just got to, I suppose the scariest thing is that not knowing, is letting life go by without ever really knowing and understanding what could I have done, what could I achieve. You know, and so I'd say that's it, is coming back to take Solinear forward somewhat fearless of what the future might bring. You just take it head on and deal with it as and when.
Brilliant, love it, love it, love the. I think that's great. And yeah, if that, bringing that back, and as you say, I mean, Americans, you say they have got a different way of looking at the world of life. I think so. Learning from that attitude is great, and bringing that back. So obviously, take each day to come and look forward. What issues have you had to overcome over the last few years?
Much like everybody, we're not exceptional. It has been an incredibly challenging few years. COVID being, the first one. I have to say, the first lockdown was a nightmare for us. We weren't, construction workers weren't designated. We were supposed to keep our industry open, but we weren't key workers. And we work nationwide. We're based in York, but we had projects in London and various parts of the country. How I'm supposed to send, operatives to service those jobs when we can't stay in a hotel, or if we are staying in a hotel, there's nowhere open to get food, and hotel rooms don't have cooking facilities. That's little things like that. So I mean, that seems like an eternity ago. But now business has sort of resumed, and that all seems to be behind us in the sense of the lockdown. The fallout that's come much further down the line has been, everybody's been scrambling and reeling. Programs have overrun. Client expectations haven't changed. There seems to have been a total sort of, you've not really been able to work at full capacity for 6 to 9 months, but we still expect our building to be finished at the point. Construction's very contract driven, and there's not a lot of forgiveness in those contracts. So definitely a disconnect between perhaps the emotional side of things and just cold hard business. So yeah, that's been challenging, definitely. And then obviously we've also experienced issues with supply chain. People are starting to get a bit jittery because of instability in the market. So you look trying to get credit facilities and things like that. It's not an issue getting them, but all of a sudden you perhaps couldn't borrow as much, or you couldn't get as high of a credit limit as you could before, or perhaps where you had a 60-day payment account, now the supplier turn around and says that's 30, and all of a sudden you're thinking, flipping out, I'm fighting a battle on how many fronts here. But equally, we've got to be sensitive to so many industries and sectors have been facing, if not the same, very similar challenges. And then obviously you've got to look at the public sector as well, and the NHS and how hard they've worked through all this, now faced with the increased cost of living and relatively minimal increases in their pay, and it's a challenging time. It really is. And inflationary pressures, cost of materials has just skyrocketed. I mean, I say this all the time, but to put some perspective to it, aluminium, extruded aluminium, is primarily what we work with. And pre-COVID, sort of late 2019, we were pricing aluminium extrusion at £3 a kilo. We're now looking at £5.50 up to £6 a kilo. I mean, it's all well and good referring to inflation at 8%, 9%, 12%, like people are, but in certain areas you're actually looking nearer 100.
Absolutely.
And so I've got an 100% increase in cost of materials, but then my credit account's been trimmed and my payment terms have been trimmed. It is just a perfect storm, but we're weathering it. And I think that's it. You've just got to, again, broad shoulders, grit your teeth, and deal with it. And hopefully we'll settle down. We'll come out the other side, as in the industry and the economy as a whole. And it'll be the new normal, so to speak.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's just accepting it is a new normal, and I guess the challenges we're facing are common. It's not like they're just our challenges. Everyone in your industry and everyone in different industries are experiencing the same challenges. So, price challenges. It's not like your competitors aren't going to have to probably adjust their prices as well if there are any competitors. Yeah. So, and the other thing, as I talk to the people I work with, it is, everyone's accepting. They may not be happy, but they understand that price increases are required in many sectors, just because we know that we know fuel's gone up, we know electricity's gone up, We know so much has changed, and therefore it's not like a shock that our prices might change.
Absolutely.
I guess. So what would you say are some of the biggest learnings you've had in business and potentially in life?
The biggest learnings. I suppose, that's risk of sounding sort of cheesy, to expect the unexpected. Never go to sleep at night thinking that you know exactly what's coming the next day, because you don't. And I'd say make a decision. Making a decision is far and away better than no decision at all. You've got to make a decision and stick by it, because going ahead with some, especially in my position, we're not a huge team here, but there is a tremendously, talented team of people who come here every day and work their socks off, and they expect me at the top to make a decision and give them direction and have the confidence to take the business forward. They've got to have that to believe in. And I suppose that is massively important. You can't come in here thinking, what do we do? Where are we going? You've got to have that sort of strength and say, look, whatever it is, we'll deal with it. Let's move forward. The number of learning curves, because the industry's changed. Perhaps, when all was hunky-dory pre-COVID, people were perhaps not as tight on, settling final accounts and being as aggressive in trying to nibble a little bit back there and pull a little bit back there, whereas all of a sudden things have tightened up, because the main contractors, the big boys in the industry, they felt the pinch massively. And so they're now being told, look, we were working on fine margins anyway, 3%, operating profit on however much in turnover, that's plummeted to 1%. And they're fighting for survival, or they're trying to claw it back. And unfortunately, we're the minnows that have to, bear the brunt of that. So you've got to, all of a sudden, we've got to have our nets be a bit more savvy from a contractual standpoint, and make sure that, the paperwork's, even more in order than it already was, and just to protect our position in that sense. And also, everybody wants to be your friend. Everybody makes it sound like they are your friend and that they are on your side, but don't get lured into that false sense of security. Business is business at the end of the day. And when one person says one thing, there could be somebody above them that says something totally different. And well, you've got bills to pay at the end of the day, and you've got a team to pay and rent to pay, and a shrug and an apology doesn't pay those bills. So you've got to, you can't, like I say, you've got to separate the emotional side of it from the business side of it, and there's a balance, definitely, but you've got to constantly have your business set up and in the right way.
It's funny so about making decisions, because I learned that my first business was very fast growing, and one of the things I learned very similar to what you've described is, the first thing was, if a decision is easy, we probably made it too late, because it's making it at the right time is the key, and therefore if I'm having to make a decision without all the information, the rule I had to work to is, I'm going to make the decision, and then by my action make it the right one if I can. And it's just having, as you say, that confidence to say, look, let's just make that decision, take action, and do our best to make it work. And I think that's the best we can do.
Yeah, it is, absolutely, because you don't know what's coming next. No. I think the world gets more and more unpredictable every year. There's an exponential sort of element to growth and development, isn't there? It's taken us, I think back to, I think the very first iPhone was released in 2006, 2007, something like that. And you look at that period of time, 2007 to now, it's only 15 years. But, what we can do now that we couldn't do 15 years ago, you then look at 2007 and look back from 2007 to, perhaps the 90s, or, when the first computer was introduced. It seems to have taken us half the time to take that next gigantic leap forward. And you know, I'm not, you know, sort of like, I used to think I was all really up to date with technology, you know, I suppose, but you know, I'm reading now about the metaverse and Decentraland and cryptocurrencies, and it's pickling my head and thinking, I somewhat understand it, but where are we going with this, you know? And there's talk now of Facebook saying, right, well, you can buy something in the metaverse that you can then own in the real world as well. And I'm thinking, what is that? What is that? What do I do with a non-fungible token? You know, please, somebody explain that to me. And you know, 15 years ago, I was happy that I could take a picture with a camera that faced towards me. Oh, a selfie. You know, now we're talking about like virtual reality and all that stuff. I mean, it's just, so yeah, you've got to be open to, you know, just constantly evolving and trying to keep up. Trying is the opposite.
Trying is the opposite word. I know. I heard a story that Tony Benn, Lord Benn, who's obviously a Labour politician, when he retired from being an MP, he'd do quite a fair bit of lecturing in primarily universities, and he'd be a speaker. And he'd always start saying that we all wake up knowing less today than we did yesterday. And obviously being in an educational establishment, it always caused consternation. But you know, his point was the amount of information available to us is expanding exponentially, and therefore my proportion of it is going to reduce over time, not increase. However hard I try to learn, as you rightly say, there's so many new things going on. We can only hope to have knowledge of a certain proportion of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even the way that information is presented nowadays, there are apps that, you know, will give you can sign up to an app that instead of reading a whole book, it will give you the insights of the entire book in 15 minutes. Because, you know, it's like, as you say, as the amount of available knowledge expands, your capacity to actually absorb and retain it doesn't expand.
No.
So it's like, right, now I've got to take that to bite-sized chunks and factor it all in. So yeah, it's really quite surreal. And I've got 2 young children. I've got a 6-year-old, well, tell lie, no, he'll be 6 in July, so a 5-year-old son and a daughter who's just about to turn 1 at the end of the month. And
brilliant.
And what's that going to look? What's their future going to look like? You know, and sort of as a parent, you look and you're thinking, right, I'm going to do this because that's going to set them up. But do I know that? You know, you don't, do you?
We don't. We're just gonna do the best we can, as I think you said earlier. You bang on, absolutely bang on. So we're probably where we're a coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who's the best coach you've ever had and why.
I have to say, Matt, that the only coach I won't say it's the only coach I've ever really had, but you know, my dad would be, you know, when I was younger, my dad was always in business. I was raised, I was very fortunate. I had a wonderful mother who was lucky enough to be able to stay at home and raise me, my brother and my sister. I'm the eldest of 3. We were so fortunate to have that upbringing. But, you know, that their agreement was like my mum would raise the children and my dad would go to work. That arrangement meant that I had limited exposure to my dad, I suppose, when I was younger. It wasn't until later on in life that mine and my dad's relationship got stronger. I think part of that is, and I think on reflection, he was trying to teach us a lot of lessons when we were younger that just went straight over the top of our head. And it's, as I've gotten older, on reflection, I think, yeah, you know what, I didn't actually realize the benefit of that at the time, but it still stuck with me. And, you know, so he wasn't just a dad, he ended up being a boss and then I suppose a business partner. And now he's just a mentor, he's a consultant, if you like. Doesn't mean he's always right. Doesn't mean we always agree on everything, but I don't think that's what it's about, does it? But I think, you know, having that relationship, strong relationship, allows us to discuss the perhaps more difficult things more easily, if that makes sense.
It does.
And he's a constant, and our relationship has gone from strength to strength over the years. And yeah, it is a real luxury. I'm very fortunate to just be able to have that sort of name in my phone, Dad, and I know I can FaceTime him, ring him and say, look,
Really?
what do you do in this situation? What would you have done? I have to say, even he recently said, you know what, if I'd sold the business 4 years ago, you know, when I was still in America, you know, I'd be sitting here now thinking, what a great time to have got out of business, you know, the way the world has been the last few years. You are having to deal with that now, and never in his 30, 40 years of business experience has he known a period of business as difficult as one that we're enduring right now.
Yep.
So there are, I have to say, you know, for a bloke who so many occasions has just believed he knew it all, for him to say, I'm humbled. There's times I don't know what to tell you, but yeah.
That's wonderful. No, and yeah, it's great when you've got that strong relationship and you've got, as you said, someone you can rely on to support you and bounce things off. Have you either from him or anyone else picked up any favourite sayings or quotes that you live by or fall back on in difficult times?
You're going to get me on this one because there's so many that I pick up and, as we go along. There's one that I actually refer to heard it more in the gym and fitness sense first, but I do think it applies quite well to life overall. It's a really old one. Socrates said, you know, how dare man or woman grow old without knowing the strength in which their body and life is actually capable of achieving. And I do think that's good. Like I said, I heard it first as I used to play rugby and I enjoy sort of staying fit and healthy, and I think it's directly related to, you know, physical strength, but I think the saying is applicable both physical, mental, you know, all avenues of life. Is you've got one life, make the most of it, live it, you know, don't. And I suppose the other one would be, nobody's ever sitting, you know, in a retirement home when they're 80 or 90 thinking, I wish I'd done more work. I wish I'd been, you know, busier. You know, you've also got to balance the family, the life, the enjoyment of life, because it can pass by very quickly. So
brilliant.
Trying to keep them both in balance.
Brilliant. Love it. Absolutely. Yeah. I think they're really valuable. And what have you learned about yourself as you've grown through your career?
What have I learned about myself? I'm a harder worker than I thought I was when I was younger.
Right. Yeah.
And I think there have been times, again, I had quite a tough, when I was younger, my dad used to call me 20-minute man. That was my nickname at times, because, you know, I thought, oh, well, I'll buy a guitar and have guitar lessons, and never stuck with it. And I like dabbling. I just kept trying things. So, you know, it was sort of tongue in cheek, but he called me 20-minute man. And I was determined to shake that. It did used to bother me. As I've got older, I thought, yeah, actually, you work harder than perhaps you've been led to believe otherwise. So.
Brilliant. I guess it's finding the things that really engage us, and we stick with them.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
So obviously, you as you said, we're going through some challenging times at the moment. But what does the future look like for Solinear, and you know, what might be the challenges that you face as you move forward?
I'd say the future is looking brighter as things are settling down.
Right.
You know, touching back on things like price increases, to some extent, the price increases aren't the issue, it's the instability. It's, you know, it's contract heavy. So you sell a job at one price, you know, but then all of a sudden the price at which you're buying it in shoots up. You've got a gap to fill. So as long as we get some stability there, business levels that you know, there seems to be plenty of optimism in, you know, the construction sector. You know, we're looking ahead at projects into 2023, 2024 already. You know, there's plenty there. So hopefully that remains. You know, we just have to, you know, Solinear as a company, like we're not huge. We're not a massive company. We're not a big beast in this terms. We don't need to chase huge amounts of turnover to feed the beast, so to speak. So for now, we're not trying to be overly ambitious. We're just trying to sort of, I wouldn't even say we're in a growth period. We're just trying to sustain, and we'll follow the market in that sense. But we're because we're not huge, that served us quite well. We were able to contract quite efficiently during the lockdown periods, and that's not.
Right.
So just maintaining that going forwards, but improving efficiencies and never spending a penny more than we have to.
Yep, no, that's sound words right now. I think I don't think it doesn't sound like you're in survival mode, but one thing I learned through a couple of recessions or whatever you want to call it, this isn't a recession, but it feels very similar to it, is survival is a victory in itself, because unfortunately other people around us may not make it, and therefore we if we get through it, we have a bigger field to play in potentially. So
absolutely. I mean, you take last year for instance, or even the year before it. In those years, okay, you want to make money. Everybody wants to make as much money as they can. That seems to be a metric by which we measure success. But that metric I think has changed, and I think the last couple of years, break even, that's an achievement in itself. And making decisions now which perhaps don't really, it's not till 5 years down the road you look back and think that was a good decision, because that's put me in this position now. But again, I suppose it comes back to, like we said, make a decision. You've got to make those decisions and try and look as far ahead as possible, but not too far down the road. Yeah, it's been wild, for lack of a better term, wild. And yeah, I'd agree with you. Survival is a success in itself.
I really, I mean, it was evidenced in as my first business was, we came out through a very, very severe recession, and unfortunately for them, but some of our competitors went by the wayside, which meant that we could increase our market share quite comfortably. So although we didn't do particularly well financially during that process, it was pretty much break even. We then grew. We had quite a significant growth spurt because of it. So I think it's been able to pat ourselves on the back just for things that we wouldn't necessarily do in normal times, if you like, and take some credit for those things are really, really quite important. So what I'm interested, given obviously quite an interesting career that you've had so far with going to sites and stuff, what would you say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now?
Quality, not quantity. Turnover is vanity, profit is sanity. All the little things our accountant, we've got a cracking accountant, and he always says that, and it's so true, but I suppose it can quality, not quantity. Don't go chasing turnover. If you're starting out, you need to focus on building a solid reputation, because that will last, forever. And then even when the opportunity to grow presents itself, and as things seem like they're trucking along, don't ever lose sight of that, and those sort of establish some core pillars and values that you're going to sort of set up your business by and run your business by, and stick to them. And like I say, write them down, tattoo them on your arm, whatever you need to do, but don't lose sight of them, because there's a temptation to get carried away in the excitement and the ambition, and all of a sudden, you can lose control very, very quickly. And once you've lost control, it is either impossible or incredibly difficult to rein it in again. So that's what I would say. Brilliant.
No, I'd certainly, that's great advice. I think, interesting enough, talk about values. Values are so key to any organization, and one thing I believe to be true is that good relationships come with a match of goals. We both want the same thing to achieve the same thing, but great relationships, whether it's with our customers, our team, or even our suppliers, come with a match of values. We both think the same things are important, and if therefore by being really clear on what our values are and letting people know, we will attract people that are like-minded, and therefore business is done way more effectively, and people will stay with us and we'll stay with them for a lot longer than if it's just about a goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. So finally, I'm interested to see, again, with your background, etc., in your career, what would be the best advice you could give to an 18-year-old you, if you could?
An 18-year-old me. I suppose I don't think I'd change a thing. I think the advice would be to just go for it. Take risks, live your life, and I think, you know what, now everybody always says life is short, life's fleeting. In hindsight it is, but life is actually long. Don't be led to believe that if you're not a millionaire and successful by 25, or if your business isn't off the ground by mid to late 20s or even early 30s for that matter, that you've missed the boat. Because I think, you know, going out in those younger years and getting as much life experience as you can, that ultimately is what's going to come back and fuel your drive and passion moving forward. And how are you supposed to know what you're passionate about without going out and trying this, that, and everything else? You know, once you found something you're passionate about, just dig in and do that. And it might not be the typical way that people say makes money, you know, but you'd be amazed. You can make money out of anything if you are pioneering, passionate, and driven with whatever that topic is. And you'll be happy doing it. And the happier you are, the longer you'll do it. And the longer you do it, the better the more experienced you become, the better you become. And if money and wealth is the metric, then you'll make more money that way as well.
Brilliant. Love it. Thank you. That's yeah, very, very, very sound advice. So it's been really interesting and really fascinating and delightful having this session with you. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, we look forward to seeing how things develop over time with you. Perhaps we can come back and swing by in a year or two and just see how things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been
Brilliant.
great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.